Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the show where we tell the stories of the people who make Clarksville, Tennessee the best place to live in America. I'm your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr. Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, real quick, if you would do us a favor, like, subscribe, leave a comment. We would really appreciate a review. It helps us out way more than you know and helps us spread this positive message of Clarksville to more and more people along the way. Hey, we got a great guest today, someone that I want to introduce to you, someone who is passionate about seeing the needs and then taking action to meet those needs. Somebody who recognizes the best in others and then is committed to help developing that talent so that they can receive their full potential. And a guy who is always positive, always got a smile on, the one and only Norman Quirion, owner of Cure Realty. Hey man, I appreciate you jumping on with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Kevin, and I'm pretty excited to be on your show and to always advocate for Clarksville and look forward to doing that today.
Yeah. What's so exciting is if you look at the last decade of Clarksville, there's been people who have risen to the top and have helped us shift the momentum in the city. And I fully believe you're one of those people.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I think that we have many people that contribute, thankfully, and I think that's happening more every day.
Absolutely.
And our city is, as you could tell, is benefiting from the hard work of others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know you got a lot of content that we're going to add value to our audience, so I'm going to jump right into it. But before we go, I think the number one question that I got to ask you is Stormin Norman. Where'd this name come about? Where'd it come from? How long you been using it?
Yeah. Well, my grandfather gave me that name.
Okay.
As you know, I spent a lot of weekends. We didn't have daycare when I was younger, and so we typically stayed with family. And I spent a lot of time at my grandfather's place. And so I was pretty spunky kid, you know.
I got it.
And my grandfather had an automotive shop with a junkyard, so there was a lot of things to do there and to get in trouble with. And so he said, my grandson Norman, I call him Stormin Norman, because he's was pretty rambunctious.
Yeah.
And so he would pick at my mom, and so that's really where Stormin Norman came from.
That's great. Now, where was his shop located?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with St. Bethlehem in Clarksville, before it was annexed, really where Walgreens is on Wilma Rudolph.
Right there at the intersection of Trenton.
Yes.
Wow.
So it was Trenton Road. There was the old post office. There was a Dollar General store, and there was a laundromat. And behind that, there was an automotive shop, Stokes Garage.
Wow.
And Glenn Long owned that complex. And so that's where he had a shop.
What a great story.
Yeah,
very much. And then you've taken advantage of it. You've just kind of run with Stormin Norman, and you fully embrace it. You've got the barbershop. You know, that's still going strong. You've had other businesses named Stormin Norman. You took it to its full advantage.
Well, you know, having a name, Norman Quirion, sometimes can be a little difficult to say, Quirion. Yeah. And so as I would introduce myself, what I really organically found is when I would introduce myself, Stormin Norman, they would remember it. Because it kind of stood out. And so it really became a marketing tool and a way to identify me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and you've lived up to it.
I appreciate it. Yeah. There's been a lot of storm.
Well, that takes me to my next question. So a lot of storm, I think that's it. So we know you've had decades of small business development, small business ownership in our community. And anyone who's done it for a while knows that there's a lot of success, but there's a lot of learning opportunities along the way. So my question to you is, you know, when those learning opportunities came about, when something didn't go the way that you thought it would go, what was it like to have the courage to continue? How'd you get through some of those? What is that? What would you say to the 25-year-old who's just starting to push, and what can they expect over the next few decades?
Well, you know, I think that you have to trust wisdom, and you try to seek out that wisdom by people that have done it. And one thing as a younger entrepreneur, I had great people around me, and I would ask questions, and man, they were so generous with their time, and they would come and sit down with me, answer questions, or give me advice how to get through a situation I was going through. And a lot of times, those same individuals make phone calls. They would make contact with people that could speed my process along. And through that, I really understood networking and the value of relationships really came real clear and apparent at a young age.
And what I love about that, what you just said is, I know that people have told me that you've done the same for them. People who are of my generation, who are, 35 and below, who are, trying to press themselves into that next level. And it sounds like what you benefited from in your early years, you took that to heart. It impacted you in such a way that now you've made that part of what you want to do for others now. I feel like that's really, really powerful.
Well, I used to ask the question of why people would help me when I was younger. I would ask, people like Jim Amos would stop by my shop and, was a real gift to me and would mentor me and answer questions. And I wondered why. He didn't owe me anything. And it wasn't until I was able to maybe share some of that advice and answer a question for someone that was going through the same thing. I answered my own question very
I love that.
Very quickly.
People like Mr. Amos, a legend in our town, someone who's just got decades of influence and involvement. We're certainly standing on the shoulders of people who are very well respected.
I'd love to just a quick thing about Mr. Amos.
Yeah, let's tell it.
He owned a string of, laundromats.
Okay.
And I owned an automotive shop, a detail shop there on Wilma Rudolph. And he had stopped by and he asked, "Hey, how are you washing those towels up?" And I said, "Well, my mom takes them home and washes them for me, brings them back."
Every day she did
that, and to help me out. I can't make it up. The next day he shows up with one of his workers and with a truck with 2 commercial washer and dryers and hooked them up in my shop. And it became what I washed those towels with for the
so he saw a need and met a need right away. And it wasn't like you asked him to do it.
I didn't ask him.
Wow.
He never asked anything of it. He was just very generous and doing that. But I think sometimes when people are being that generous, you question. You're like, "Hey, what's the catch? What is it that I'm going to..." But I think they saw the value in someone that was giving it all they had, because I was giving it everything I had. Sure. I had no other choice to try to make it, and so I was just blown away by the generosity.
Wow. And I think that is an element that I wish we could communicate to more people as they're starting to move to Clarksville from out of town, or maybe this is a new area to them, or they chose Austin Peay and they stuck around, or they were maybe stationed here for a time and they've stuck around, is that really the people of Clarksville, the natives of Clarksville, still have a commitment to each other that is kind of that old town feel.
Yes.
Right. This place is blowing up. The market is crazy. It is what it is. We're receiving a lot of the benefits of living in this great town. But that undercurrent of service towards others, of looking out for your neighbor, that is still strong. And it always has been. And I think the people who make this town the best place to live in America, that's still going on 100%.
Very much.
I love that story about Mr. Amos, though. That's great. So I got to know, a podcast, a book, something like that has really changed your life. What are you inputting into Stormin Norman's brain to then output and affect our community in a positive way?
Yeah, I think a book that recently really impacted me and really I could really identify with was Greenlight by Matthew McConaughey.
And I can actually see a lot of that personality of Matthew McConaughey kind of be you. Yeah. So I think what we need to do is get you a Buick commercial. Right? That's what he does. You can do Buick.
Right. I mean,
All right. Whoever's selling Buicks around here, we've got to get Norman in one and do the voiceover and the backdrop. Yeah. I don't know if it's Buick. I think it's Buick, but that would be awesome.
I thought it was Lincoln.
Okay, Lincoln.
It is Lincoln.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we know who sells Lincoln, so I think we're good on that. That's right. So tell me about the book.
Yeah, I think the book really kind of identified a guy that, was given a lot of freedom in his young childhood to explore and to figure out who he was. And if he made a mistake, he owned it. And then he, made himself better because of it, and never was sympathized with that he couldn't be something because of limitations. And his parents were, they were highly passionate people, and that give him the freedom to learn and to grow on his own. And so I could really identify with the possibilities that he had.
Yeah. It's a great parenting advice of identifying your child's strengths and letting them work those out.
Yes.
And giving them space to make some mistakes along the way, but figure out what their gifting is and really go by that. With a name like Stormin Norman, with your history in business, we know you're a master negotiator. It just comes with the territory, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little tip, trick. What do you got for someone who says, hey, I'm going to start making business deals? Whether that's simple transaction or, hey, I'm really cooking up some deals here. We know you got the experience, so you got to drop some nuggets for us right now.
Well, I think the nuggets, you really become a student of others. And so I can even look at, your dad, Kevin Kennedy Sr. I used to watch his marketing and the way he would integrate as he come into events and speak to everyone, remember their name, understood what they did. And so he really was a master at that negotiations of people, and people come first. Okay. The business comes second.
Yes.
Anytime you get to know someone and get to know their needs, then all you're doing is filling in the blanks. And so as in the negotiation, there's always a want and a need, and how do we get those there? And so how do we do it that we're both respected at the end? Yeah. And we have we can both hold our head up high at the end of the deal.
Yeah. I want to say what you said just one more time. At the end of the deal, we're both respected.
Very much.
Those are the best deals that go through.
Yes, they
because
are.
When you feel burned by a deal, it's because you felt disrespected. That's it.
Yes.
And when you feel like you've walked away from a deal, numbers off the table, it's usually that the experience of that negotiation process was positive.
Yes.
Right. It's funny you mentioned my dad. He loves to go to flea markets.
Yes.
And, there's a master negotiation when you get to a flea market. And he would take me around. I was a young kid, 12, 15, 16 years old. And he would show me how he would buy just these little collectible knives. And you're right. It was never about the knife. It was always about connecting with the person,
very much,
figuring out what their value was, and then working to see where you can make something work in the middle. But the respect that comes as a mutual benefit to each other then lets you walk away from that deal and feel you both have that positive vibe. I love that. That's a great tip along the way.
Well, at a young age, I worked for my aunt and uncle. They owned an automotive shop here.
Okay.
StB Auto Detailing.
Wow.
And I was 15 years old, and I get they moved back. My uncle retired out of the military, moved back home, and started this shop. And what I didn't know, it was really going to change my life going to work there, because we did work for all the dealerships in town.
Okay. And
through those dealerships, we had people like Tom Denny, Wayne Harrison, Sid Johnson, Don Jenkins, Murray Keeter. And so I really was a student of theirs. I watched these guys and how they operated. And if they said they were going to do something, and one of them used a term one time, Murray Keeter told me once, he says, someone asked if he was going to do something. He said, I'm a man of my word. And he shook his hand, and I watched that interaction, and I just admired it so much. And he actually came to my senior English, which was Carolyn Bowers.
Okay.
She became mayor of Montgomery County.
That's right.
And I believe I was close to her last class that she had. But Murray had came to our class and to speak business and entrepreneurship. And at the very end, he pulled out a wad of $5 bills, and anyone that had asked questions, he'd give them a $5 bill.
Okay.
And he said, it pays to ask questions.
Hey, that's a good
and it
line.
Always stuck with me. And so I just really admired the way they operated.
Right. Yeah.
Very much.
Murray, of course, for those who don't know, he was the longtime GM of
Jenkins and Wynn.
Yes. Right. And the Jenkins family's been such a blessing to this town, but they can't do what they do unless they have good people like Murray who are behind the scenes or in front of the scenes or whatever it may be along the way. And of course, he's since retired, and that ethic of being honest and fair has continued in their family business. It's why it's been such a blessing
very much
to our community for so long. I love that. So when you grow up in Clarksville, you kind of get this feel like, oh, this is a small town, right? I remember places, little corners in town that were nothing 20 years ago, and now that they've blown up. But my question to you is, when do you feel like the momentum shifted? When do you feel like Clarksville went from this place of we like the status quo, we like it as it is, to now, hey, we're pressing forward and we're going to create something really special here.
Yeah, I believe the year was around 2017.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that, and then the next year, April 18th of 2018, the Downtown Commons was opened.
Yeah.
And, Mayor Durrett, I worked with him at that time, and it was a real privilege just to be a witness and to watch that come together.
Yes.
And the vision come together. And
because for those who don't know, what was on top of that site previously?
it was a bank building that was empty.
Empty bank building, just sitting there, vacant.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the most unanimous decision that this was a great idea to do.
Oh no, it was unpopular.
Yes.
But then the city council came in on the city side and wound up giving some money to it.
Yes.
And agreed. And then the county commission, and honestly, another guy around town that, there's a couple different guys that made this happen. One was Dr. Werner.
Yeah.
He owned the property.
Okay.
So he had to agree to get rid of that property.
Yes.
And then really what I would consider just one of the catalysts of all people in Clarksville was Mr. Jack Turner.
Yes.
He gave the money for the down payment of that property, and he believed in those projects so very much. And, and Mayor Durrett calls it the Clarksville Living Room. Mm-hmm. And I believe when that happened, it really spurred the downtown development in a much different way.
Wow.
In Clarksville
I think
itself.
that's so profound that you would put the date on it around that time with that development, because we didn't even talk about this before the episode.
No.
But that's exactly when I feel like momentum shifted, is
Very
when
much.
that went there. And now we have events. When my family goes to eat down there, my kids are begging to go kick the soccer ball on the green. It stirs a lot of communal feeling, and the people, like you say, that those names that you've mentioned are so instrumental in having gotten us to this place where we had a big bank building that was empty, dormant, not full of life, and we have created this now. The sphere that's out there, the running water, the design, all of those architectural elements have really given it a unique feel to our downtown, and has spurred a lot of the growth, which has, created the new culinary experiences, has led to the impact that's being developed. And I feel like that was a big shift in that year as well. And I know you were right there in the middle of all of it.
It was definitely a big part of it. And, I couldn't mention that down there without, we created a concert series called Downtown at Sundown.
Yeah.
And so Charles Hand and Sammy Stewart are the reason why that came about. As we pitched the idea, they believed in it. Yeah. And so they supported that idea. And that's how those concert series started to happen down there. And it created just a beautiful landscape for someone and their families to come enjoy. And then the public art scene kicked around that time.
Oh, amazing.
We put the Starry Night mural on 420 Madison.
Yes.
That was the first public art project since the 1999, right after the 99 tornado. Okay. The Bursting with Pride mural, which is next to the Roxy, that F&M.
Almost a 20-year gap.
Yeah, F&M supported that. That's how it got on the wall. So that was the first public art project since that mural had been put up. And now we have many more examples of that coming into play.
Well, and here's what I love about the names that you keep mentioning is a lot of these are pillars of our community. They have had great successful careers in their individual industries. And if we're being very honest, none of them directly personally benefit from any of these projects. It's not something that they're doing for personal gain. Their career, the trajectory of their success has maybe moved them a step beyond where they get a direct impact. But what we see is their love for this town, their love for the people of this town, to create and to continue to build something new is powerful. And they love this place. And I think their love for this place helps them put their success on the line and then be able to spur things and to be able to kickstart them so that people like myself and my kids, who maybe I'm not in a place yet where I have the opportunity to influence in some ways that they do.
Yes.
We get to be blessed by it. And I think it's powerful. It's something that we should thank them more for. But I'm just overall so thankful that these men and women and their families who have been connected to our community for so long have not moved on with their success, and yet they're still deeply connected to the heart of what's growing.
Very much. I think too that you talk about negotiation or making a deal, and when you sit down in front of some of these individuals that you really admire and look up to, and you have this idea, and you're wanting to put on this series, and so that's when real negotiations kick in, and you really learn to have all your facts together and everything you need when you show up, because they didn't get to where they are by taking deals that didn't make any sense.
Hey, come on, I like that.
And so
you're adding them, you're giving them value in what they want to invest in, and they want to see it. And those have just been home runs. So.
Yes, and honestly, during that time, we couldn't mention the growth of Clarksville without mentioning Austin Peay.
Yes,
and when Dr. White landed in Clarksville, Tennessee, it was a real gift to us.
Yes.
She was a marketer by trade, and so you could really tell that. She exposed Austin Peay and connected Austin Peay to Clarksville in a much different way. Being born and raised here, sometimes I didn't always know that Austin Peay existed. Yes. I knew we played our football games there, if we got a championship, and I knew we graduated at the Dunn Center. That's right. That's really what I knew of Austin Peay. But when Dr. White and Elliot come here, and it has continued.
Yes.
But I would give her a lot of credit to the growth of Clarksville.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. So I guess that's the next question is, what are you excited about in the future? What do you see over the next, let's say, 5 years? Like what's coming up on our horizon that you, with this great rich history in our community, would say, wow, this is what I'm excited about. Yeah. This is what's coming down the pipeline. This is what our young people can get excited about. This is what our seasoned community who've been around for decades can be proud of. What is that for you?
Yeah. Well, very much I think it's creativity. I think we're seeing more creativity and more ideas, and then the more possibilities of these ideas. And if you just look back in the, really the history of Fort Campbell and Clarksville, if you start looking at some of the garrison commanders, the ex-generals that were in, that served and commanded 101st Airborne, that have moved back to this community, and because I've heard many times as maybe they were here as a commander before, and next thing you know, they're coming to take over as the commander of the whole 101st Division.
Right.
And each and every one of them that I've ever been in a room and listened to speak really spoke of how Clarksville helped their families, and that they were able to do the job they were able to do because Clarksville itself come up to help be a part of their family and raise their family. Each and every one of them through the years that I've listened to. But I think you have people with such talent and such, doability move into this community. It's like a shot in the arm. Yeah. And so as I watch, I can mention Walt Lord for a good example. Yeah. Had never served at the 101st, could have moved anywhere after retirement, picked Clarksville, Tennessee. Wow. And if you hadn't seen his impact of what he's doing with Austin Peay and his love and care for it, man, and the way we embrace people like that that want to do good, I think is really a testament to all Clarksvillians in our own community.
The military's impact here really can't be overstated.
Oh,
right? It's
tremendous.
It's powerful. Yeah.
I got
My
a great
mom
story.
Actually came here because her dad was in the military, and she had bounced around, her entire childhood, and they decided to call here home. And so, even the natives, those of us like me, like my dad, who've been around forever and whose roots are here forever, we're still personally directly impacted by the military in some way or another. And I know you are as well.
Very much. Just a quick story on the military. Yeah. So through the years, first general I ever remember having contact with was General Keene. And he's now on the news. He's a contributor on Fox News, I believe. And I see him, and I used to wash his car at that detail shop I worked at. And so he invited me to a New Year's Eve party at the Officers Club, and just very generous and kind to me. But I think what really changed me and my business model at the automotive shop I had, General Petraeus stopped by my shop one day, and I knew who he was just by being the commanding general. and his Sergeant Major was with him, Command Sergeant Major Hill.
Okay.
And I did some work for him on a car, and man, we just had the best interaction. Well, my goodness. Over the next following weeks, I would have soldiers stop by and they say, "Hey, Command Sergeant Major Hill told me to come here, and General Petraeus told me to come here."
Yeah.
And so they advocated for me.
Yes.
They saw how passionate I was about the work I was doing, and I mean, I was blown away by their generosity and their faith in me.
Yes.
And so it really was a game changer of how I operated.
Yeah.
Very much.
Honestly, your industry of doing that and mine, what I do for, kids in dentistry is not all that different.
Right.
And when people start to believe in you and they value you looking them in the eye, telling them with full confidence, hey, this is what I would do for my family member.
Yes.
This is how I would treat someone who I really care about. And I'm going to treat your vehicle. I'm going to treat your child's mouth with the same care, diligence, respect that I would my niece, my nephew, whomever it may be, whom we deeply care about. That's what makes Clarksville special, because there's lots of people like us who've, put our skills, our talents out there in order to be a blessing to others. And we're not going anywhere. Right.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And you do get this immense level of gratitude where you see that reflected when someone appreciates it and they notice that you've done, above and beyond in trying to treat them the same way that you would treat somebody else and treat somebody that you deeply care about. That's great. Well,
a lot of generosity in the community, a lot of generosity. Speaking of the military, I broke my thumb once.
Okay.
And I can always remember it. It was the night that Mike Tyson bit Holyfield's ear.
Yeah, never forget that.
Because I was in the emergency room with my thumb messed up, and I'm young. I had no health insurance at the time, and not a lot of money either. I'm a pretty young guy. This doctor fixed me up, and as he gets to speaking to me, come to find out he was a military doctor that was working on the side there at that time. It was, I believe, Gateway Hospital. And so he understood my situation, and he says, "Look, you don't have to come back here. Where do you work at?" And he asked me all these questions. He come every week to check on my hand, took me out of the cast, took care of everything. I never received a bill of any kind, but he come made house call visits to my
really
employment.
Is unbelievable.
And I for no other reason than to help me.
Yeah.
He just saw a young man that was just getting started, and his generosity, it was a game changer as far as money. There's no telling. It could have been $1,000, $2,000, but it's a lot of money when you don't have a lot.
Yeah. But whatever the money was, the gratitude, 10x.
I never forgot it.
Never forget that kind of gratitude. Amazing. Well, I'm going to go to lightning round. We're going to put you on the spot.
Here we go. Come on, Kev.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't know this would be so hard.
Ooh. Yeah. I think I didn't realize the environment sometimes of business would turn into such a popularity contest. Sometimes it wasn't always about the value you were bringing. It was your exposure and what you're involved in, how you could market yourself. Sure. And so it became very tasking to be everything for your business, to market, to be the face of it, to be a positive light for your employees and for others, and to encourage others. It becomes, it's a work of honor. Yes. But it very much, sometimes you don't always realize what it's going to take from you personally.
I love that you said that. It's a work of honor, but you don't know what it takes. Ooh. And if I'm being really honest with you, if I look back to me at 14, 15, 16, when I'm trying to decide the trajectory of my life, I look at my dad and I say, man, he's busting it every day. He's giving it his all. I don't know if I can do that. Yes. And I don't know if I can be a lawyer and achieve and accomplish what he achieves, because I don't know if I can do what he's done, do what he's doing. And it's a challenge to put yourself out there, to continue to have the skill and the excellence of the actual profession, but then try to make people aware of it. So that's a very profound answer. Okay. 20 years ago, I didn't know this would be so fun.
Yeah. Well, helping others, honestly. Wow. And honestly, if you ever get a phone call from someone in the community and they say, Norman, I have a grand idea, but I need your help.
Yeah.
And you know that just being asked is such an honor sometimes, and you show up and you have these discussions, and next thing you know, maybe a concert or a golf tournament is happening, or a benefit for someone in the community, and you had just a very small part of that.
Or a podcast episode.
Podcast episode. But when you're asked, and you know that people see value in you, and then that confidence level builds. And I have always sought influence for one reason and one reason only. I've sat across from people that picked up the phone and made a phone call from me many times to others. Can you help Norman with this, or would you do me a favor and help Norman with that? I never forgot those phone calls.
Wow.
And so if I've ever been able to make a phone call in the most genuine way and say, I want you to help Kevin here. The poor guy obviously don't have a lot of talent. And
That's right.
We need to help Kevin all we can.
Story.
Right?
Hey, this is exactly how it went. Because when I called you and I said, hey, I'm going to pitch you this idea, and you're one of the first 5 or so people that I pitched it to, you don't have a bunch of episodes to look back and say, do I want to associate myself with this? Do I want to put myself out there? You didn't say yes fast enough. Yes. I mean, you couldn't say yes fast. You was just immediately, yes, I love Clarksville. I want to be a part of that. And so I appreciate it. I think that's great. Helping others is fun. Yeah. You get to see them catapult and reach new heights.
Well, I tell you, it's very energizing for myself to see a guy like you, and and to watch you start something from scratch and believe in it with your whole heart, and then the way you love your family. I had no other reason but to say yes to somebody that cares so much about their family and others that much. It's a no-brainer at that point.
Okay, next question. Text, phone call, email. What's the best way to communicate with you?
Well, so I'm a little old school.
Okay.
I really love a phone call.
I was going to say, I knew you would be.
Yeah.
Now, my dad, he can't text.
Right.
He doesn't have an email.
Yeah.
But what I've learned over time is the slick talkers, those guys who know how to use a conversation, they're picking up the phone. I think that's cool.
Yeah. I think the art of conversation is something that's sometimes, I call it hand-to-hand combat.
That's right.
Okay. And we talk about those communication, whether it's phone call, text, and I do all those. I dislike email the most.
Okay.
It's not my favorite. But what I really love is to sit across the desk or in that chair face to face, because I'm really engaging them. Yeah. And I'm trying my best to read that yes come out of them.
I know.
So much,
Yeah. You do lose a lot in some of those communications, whether it's, digital, but I kind of had it figured you'd say that. Okay. Last one. You get a book deal today. You got to write the book in 1 month. What's the topic? What's the subject? And do you have a title for it? You get a book deal today.
Yeah, I think it would have to be on the lines of success, be careful.
Okay.
And I think through success, be careful is really, everybody really is your champion when things are going just the way you want it to. Yeah. But no one ever prepares you for when those big dips in the road comes and when those failures happen. And man, the courage that it takes to walk back out that door and to face everyone and say, boy, I messed up, or I didn't fulfill that goal, but I'm going to reach for another one, and to continue to do that. I think when we need more now than ever, if you ever want to do something for anyone, if they're in that predicament, I don't care what's going on in their life, we've lost, come to their house, come there and tell them, look, I'm here for you. What do you need? I got a great story on that.
Okay.
Leadership Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
This last year, I had a friend that I was in class with reach out. I was in 2018. They reached out and they asked me for lunch here in Clarksville. So I met them. I hadn't seen them in a couple of years. Yeah. And so as we were sitting there for lunch, and he said, well, the real reason I'm here, Norm, we know in your class that we saw you've had a couple bumps in the road this year. There's some things that we've noticed you might have been having a tough time. What we're really here for is to see what you need.
Wow.
And we have accountants, we have, mortgage people. We have everything that you can imagine for a resource. You tell us what you need and we'll help you. And I was so taken back by that because, and humbled by it, that they recognized without me saying a word.
Wow.
And
is
so
powerful.
that really
Yeah.
let me know that the work that I was doing was
Yes.
the right work.
Success.
I was
Be
surrounded
careful.
by people that they got it and they understood.
Yeah.
And so no matter how strong you think you are and,
Yeah.
and how successful you think you are, man, when those dark times happen,
Yes.
you'll be reaching
That's right.
for those very people.
Wow. I love it. So profound. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on our episode today. We've got Norman Quirion, Stormin Norman. There have been so many nuggets dropped in this episode. We're super grateful for your time. Thank you for all of the work that you do for Clarksville, for our community. As always, you guys know where to find him. You can find information to contact him down in the description below. If you're listening online, it'll be in the episode description. But thanks for so much for joining our community. Thanks for watching Clarksville Vibe the Show, the show where we tell the stories of people who make Clarksville the best place to live in America. Hit like, subscribe, interact any way you can. Help us grow our community. Thanks so much.
And if you can do anything for Clarksville, be an advocate. When you speak of Clarksville, speak of it like it's your own family.
Amen.
Amen,
Love it,
brother.
man.
Thank you, brother.